Hi, I'm Old Norse Specialist Dr. Jackson Crawford, and in this video I am going to probably begin without finishing a read-through of the poem Lokasenna from the Poetic Edda. I will read it first stanza by stanza in Old Norse and reconstructed 1200s pronunciation that is different from modern Icelandic pronunciation, the pronunciation that you're probably used to hearing if you've heard Old Norse literature read. So just keep in mind that it's a deliberate, informed choice, and I'll be reading this based on the text in Jonas Kristjansson and Vesteden Olason's Edukvæði series. That is the new, really authoritative version of the text of the Poetic Edda in Old Norse. And I will probably not have the runes in this, because I did that when I read through Hávamál and Völuspá and Grímnismál and Baldurstraumar, and since nobody watches these videos, that takes hours and hours and hours. I'm not going to waste my time doing it this time. All right. Lokasenna. Lokasenna means Loki's truth-telling, fundamentally. So Loki is a weak masculine noun in Old Norse. It ends in I in the nominative form, but its genitive or possessive form, the form that means Loki's, is Loka. Then there's the root san in Old Norse that means true. Senna is then to tell the truth. And so Loki's truth-telling, which we know better today under names like Loki's taunts, or some people use the pretentious, archaic Scottish English term flighting, fundamentally is about Loki telling the truth about the gods, and the truth is an insulting truth the gods don't want told. Now, we begin in the Codex Regius, the manuscript of the Poetic Edda, with a prose forward. Frá Ægi og Góðum, concerning Ægir and the gods. Ægir öðru nafni het Gumir. Hann hafði búið awesum ol, þó hann hafði fengið ketil in mikla sem nú sagt. Til þeirrar veitslu kom Odin og Frigg kona hans. Þór kom eigi því að hann var í Austurvegi. Sif var þar kona Þórs, Bragi og Idun kona hans. Týr var þar, hann var einhendur. Fenris úlfur sleit hånd af honum, þó hann var bundinn. Þar var Njörður og kona hans Skaði, Freyr og Freyja, Víðar son Óðins. Loki var þar og þjónustumenn Freys, Bugvir og Bóla. Margt var þar Ósa og Olva. Ægir åtti 2 þjónustumenn, Fimafengur og Eldir. Þar var lýsigull haft fyrir eldsljós. Sjálft barsk þar ól. Þar var gríðastaðar mikil. Menn lofuðu mjög hversu góðir þjónustumenn Ægis voru. Loki mátti ekki heyra það og drap hann Fimafeng. Þó skóku Æsir skjöldu sína og uppðu að Loka og eldu hann braut til skógar, en þeir fóru að drekka. Loki hvarf aftur og hitti úti eldi. Loki kvaddi hann. All that together says, Ægir, who by another name was called Gumir, he had prepared ale for the Æsir, the main family of the Norse gods, but also used collectively for all the gods. When he had gotten the big kettle, which now is said or told. So this comes right after the poem Humiskvida in the Poetic Edda about Thor and Tyr retrieving an enormous cauldron for making beer for the gods from Tyr's father in the realm of the anti-gods, so-called giants, the Jotnar. His father named Hymir. So this is following that story directly in the Poetic Edda. Now, Odin and Frigg, his wife, came to that feast. Thor did not come because he was on the east road. Now, typically the gods, when they are represented as going to fight with or otherwise engage the anti-gods or giants of Jotnar, they go east, so that's what it means. Siv was there, Thor's wife, Bragi, and Idun, his wife. Tyr was there, he was one-handed. Fenrir the wolf, took off his hand when he was bound. And of course, it's a very famous story, told in full in the prose. Njordur was there, and his wife Skadi, Freyr and Freya, and Vidar, the son of Odin. Loki was there, and the servants of Freyr, named Bugvir and Boila. There were many gods, Aesir, and elves. Now, what exactly an elf is in Norse mythology is extremely vague. It's hard to tell what's going on with that term. I've always thought that it's either the same thing as dwarf entirely, or it is a broad term for supernatural beings lesser than the gods or Jotnar, but who are positive that they're on the side of gods or human beings. So in that case, dwarf would then be a subcategory of elf. At any rate, probably these servants of Freyr, Bugvir, and Boila count as elves, since they're not counted as gods anywhere, but they're also not mentioned anywhere but in this poem. Aegir had two servants, Fimafinger and Eldir. Bright gold was had for the light of fire there, so the gold is so bright that it lights up the hall as if it were fire at night. The ale bore itself there, so presumably what that means, even though he has servants, I'm not sure what they're doing in this case, the ale is like flowing on its own out of the keg straight into their drinking horns, or it's, pouring itself from the ceiling or something. It's hard to say what's going on, but the ale is somehow serving itself. It was a place of great peace. It was a great place of peace. So in the realm of the gods within their enclosure, Lokasenna, often called Asgard in English, you're not supposed to draw blood, so it's a peace place. Men praised very much how good Aegir's servants were. And by the way, the gods are called men. Men, M-E-N-N, in Old Norse really is sentient beings, right? So gods and elves are praising how good the servants are. Loki could not hear that, and he killed Fimafinger. Then the Aesir, the gods, shook their shields and screamed at Loki and drove him away to the forest, and they went to drinking. Loki came back and met Eldir outside. Loki said to him. So now the actual poem is beginning, and after a brief message from my long-suffering sponsor, I will come back and read some of the first stanzas of this poem. So the poem begins with Loki speaking to Eldir, the servant of Aegir that he's meeting outside of Aegir's hall after he's been kicked out for killing the other servant, Fimafinger. So Loki says, Seg þú that Eldir, svo að þú enugi fetti gangar framar, what her inni hafa at olmolum, sigtiva synir. So say it, Eldir, so that you do not go 1 foot further forward. Now the not is the gi that's on Anu. Gi, if you remember from the videos where I've read through Havamal and Blosba, gi is just a negative suffix can be added to pretty much any word. So not 1 foot, Anu gi feti is what's, the gi is the negative. So tell me that before you go, and we kind of have to read before instead of so that you go 1 foot forward, but that kind of conjunction is very interchangeable in Old Norse poetry. So tell me, before you go another foot forward, what the sons of victory god, Sunir Sigtiva, and of course it's put that way for alliteration. We've got Ljóðaháttr meter here, and I've got a whole video explaining the details of Ljóðaháttr meter. But this last line has got to have 2 alliterating stressed syllables, so Sigtiva sinner, victory god, sons. It's just a way of saying gods. All right. So what the gods here within have at beer speech, at Olmol. What are they talking about while they're drinking? That's what he wants to know. So, stanza 2, Elder said, Av vapen sin döma och omvägrisni sina sig tyva synder. Ossa och olva här in I eru, mangi där I ordi vinner. So, the victory god's sons, the gods, talk, döma, judge, about their weapons, or vapensin, and about their deeds in war, the vigrisni, of the gods and elves, ossa och olvas, which gender plurals of them, who are here within, eru, her, inni, not one man, man gi, right, so the gi is the negative there. And by the way, for those of you studying Old Norse, when you add the negative gi to man, it's just man gi, even in the nominative, it's not mother gi, man gi is nominative. So not one man, not one person again, because this can mean gods, is a friend, vinner, to you, there, in word, I ordi. So they're talking about their weapons and their deeds in battle, and not one of them is saying anything good about you. Loki said, stanza 3, In skallganga ägis hallir I, och that sumbl at sjå. Jol och ovu fyri ek åsa sonum, och blend ek thames wa meni mjöð. Alright, so he doesn't say I, but the I is implied. Shall go in, skallganga in, to Agir's halls, I Agis hallir, to see at sjå upon that feast, to look upon that feast, all that sumbl. I bring ek fyri jol och ovu, so like slander and bad words to the sons of gods, sonum osa. They're called sons of gods rather than gods, again, to fill out metrical line. And I blend, ek blend, for them, thame, in such a way, swore their mead, mjöd, with a curse, with badness, mani. So, and I'll blend their mead with a curse. Elder said, stanza 4, Vets du, ef thu in gengar, ägis hallir I, och that sumblat sjå, Ropi och rogi ef thu uis och håll regen, och there munu thou thera that. You know, if you go in to Agir's hall to look upon the feast, kind of mirroring what Loki said in the previous stanza, if you pour, if thu uis, slander and bad words, Ropi och rogi, upon the faithful gods, O håll regen, thou, will dry it, munu therathat, or there, on you. So they're going to wipe it off on you if you pour it out on them. Loki said, stanza 5, Vets du that eldir, vit einir skullum sor yrðum sakask, auðigar verða mun ekki ansvarum, thu melir til markt. You know it, elder, if we two, vit, alone, einir, should exchange sakask, injuring words, sor yrðum, I would be, ek mun verða, rich in answers, auðigar ansvarum, if you spoke too much, if thu melir til markt. So, if we were to compete in words, I would be all the better if you spoke too much, because you speak badly, right? You speak so stupidly or badly that I'm going to be better off if you talk too much. So he's very dismissive. Síðan gekk Loki inn I hollina, en þeir svo fyrir voru, hver inn var komin, þóknuðu þeir allir. So then Loki went into the hall, and when they who were within saw who was come within, hver inn var komin, they all went silent. Þeir allir þóknuðu. Loki said, stanza 6, Þyrstur ek kom þessar hallar til, loftur langan veg, også at biðja at mer gevi meran drykk mjadar. I came thirsty, ek kom thirstur, to this hall, til þessar hallar, loftur, that's another name of Loki, on a long road, langan veg. So he acts like he's been gone a long time and he's thirsty. He's setting up this situation where he's this poor wanderer who's come in looking for hospitality in the hall that he's come across, right? Much as the beginning of Hofmal structure, all about wanderers and the hospitality they need when they come to your home. And I've come at Bithya Osu to ask the gods that they give me at Gebi Mer one ain famous drink of mead, Maran Drik Miadar. Stanza 7, he continues. Of course, he's a guy who just murdered the waiter, and he's come back in to act like he's never been there, and he's thirsty. But he continues. Hui thegeth svo thrungen goð að þeir mella nemegð, sessa og staði velit mer sumbliat eða heitið meg heðan. Why are you silent, hui thegeth you angry gods, that you may not speak? Choose for me velid mer at the feast at sumbli, seats and places, right? So give me a place to sit or stand or take my station here, or order me from here. Eða heitith meg heðan, order me away. All right, so now Bragi, fairly obscure god, said, stanza 8, Sessa okstadi velja þeir sumbli at asir aldregi, þviat asir vitu, hveim þeir alda skulu gamban suml geta. So he kind of echoes Loki here. The Asir will never choose for you, velja their aldregi, at the feast, at sumbli, seats and places, sessa okstadi, because the gods know, thviat asir vitu, with who, hweim, they, with who among men, hweim alda, they shall get their skulu geta, a joyful feast, gaman suml. So, they know who they want to show a seat, and it's not you, because they know who they want to have a nice feast with. Loki said, stanza 9, Mantu that Odin viti ordaga blendum blóði saman. Olvi bergia letstu egi mundu, nema okkar veri boðum borit. Do you remember Odin, when we two, vit, in early days, ordaga, blended our blood together, blendum blóði saman? You said, let's you would not, mundu egi, bergia olvi, you would not taste ale unless it were carried, nema borit, very borit, to us both, okar bodum. So you and I blended our blood together in ancient days. We swore you would never taste ale unless it were also served to me. Now, this story is not told anywhere. This is the only hint about it, but there's a pretty good chance that this is the entire reason why Odin keeps Loki around, considering that Loki causes a lot of trouble for the gods and ultimately will fight against them at Ragnarok. Because Odin says in Grimnismal that he lives on ale alone, and so if he can only be, ale and wine, alcoholic drinks alone, much like certain people I'm related to, and since he lives only on alcoholic drinks, if he can only be served them when Loki is too, of course he can keep Loki around. But we don't know why he made this oath. Stanza 10. Odin said, Ristu þó vidar og lot Ulfs fóður sitja sumbleat, síðar oss Loki kveði lastasovum egis holu I. So rise then, Vidar. Now he's talking to Vidar, his son, the so-called silent god, the one who's going to avenge him on the wolf Fenrir at Ragnarok, which is interesting given that he then says, let the wolf's father sit at the feast. So he's calling out Loki's role in the ultimate destruction of the gods when he's asking Vidar, the faithful one who will avenge Loki's faithlessness on Odin, or Fenrir's attack on Odin, to give up his seat to the wrongdoing Loki, and calling it out very explicitly. Since Loki may speak blasphemous words, bad words, slanderous words, lastastovum, about us, in Agir's hall, I Agis hollu. Þó stóð Vidar upp og skenkti Loka, en áður hann drukki kvaddi hann Ósuna. Then Vidar stood up, and he served Loki, and before he, being Loki, drank, he spoke to the gods, kvaddi hann Ósuna. Stanza 11. Heilir Asir, heilar Ósinjor, og ol ginn heilog góð, Nämä så ein os innar sitter, bragi, becum a. Hail the gods, hail the goddesses, heilar Æsir, heilar Osinur, and all the very holy gods, like old gin hail god. Except that one god, Nämä så ein os, who sits within, sitter innar, bragi, on the benches. So this begins the part of Lokasenna where he starts individually calling out the different gods and goddesses and insulting them. He has different things to say about the various gods, but he mostly just calls the different goddesses whores. And we will begin in our next installment of this read-through of Lokasenna with those various insults that Loki puts on the gods and the gods put on him. For now, from the Golden San Juans in beautiful Colorado, I'm wishing you all the best.